Welcome back to the studio, and welcome to this special painting project where I'm going to be working on a little study of a cascade moving through a paddock, inspired by a scene just outside of a place called Alexandra in the South Island of New Zealand. I'm working on an 8x10 homemade linen panel. Now here's my reference material, and it really is lacking something. To be honest with you, I find it kind of boring. However, it has this thing going for it, and I sometimes call that the seed of an idea. You see, when we just have the seed of an idea, something amazing can grow from just that tiny little bit of inspiration. Now take a note, here are the handmade Blue Ridge oil colors that I'll be using for this demonstration, and you can get your hands on those by clicking that link in the description down below. Now I've started off here by lining out my composition with a combination of burnt umber and permanent crimson. I love the warm flush that this gives those block-in colors as I add them between some of those darker marks. I decided here to use some artistic license. Now, one of the issues that I had with my initial reference material was that the winter trees had completely dropped all of their leaves. I just missed that autumn foliage, but I thought this nice golden touch here with the stand of willows would really provide some beautiful color harmony in the scene. I also wanted to roll the clock back in the year a little bit, and instead of having dried dead grass, I wanted some more lush greenness either side of our cascade. I thought that this would add some much needed vibrancy and life to the scene. But that's not all. I'm going to also add a couple of extra little characters in the mix. Over on the right hand side, I thought, wouldn't it be a nice touch if we could just have some sheep that were grazing along the banks here? Now, I'm not looking for the perfect photograph to copy in order to make my paintings. I'm just looking for a little spark of inspiration, a leaping off point, something that I could work with, but take so much further. And sometimes the idea or the changes could just be simple. They don't have to be grand, like adding an epic mountain or a canyon to the scene. Just a simple change in the season can sometimes be enough to create more interest. My first step after lining up the composition is blocking in, and I normally do this with bristle brushes. Here I'm using a combination of bristle filberts as well as some Tish daggers. Now for my shadow areas, like some of the shadows between these rocks, I'm applying a much darker color, a combination of phthalo green and permanent crimson applied with a synthetic filbert brush. Here, this one is an evergreen made by Rosemary & Co. Love these brushes because they really hold their shape so nicely and give me nice sharp edges, perfect for communicating those rocks. Bristles naturally carry a bit more body in that paint that they're applying, and that texture is perfect for thicker highlights. I try to keep those highlights relatively thick and my shadows pretty thin. I didn't have much reference of this exact scene, but just a simple snap with my iPhone when I was standing there on the banks of the river. But I found other references from similar locations that I thought would give me the edge in just communicating what these trees actually look like. Now, one thing I love to do is bring that sky down into the tree by poking little holes in the canopy here. This communicates those gaps between the leaves. I apply this with a synthetic ivory rigger, and I try to make them as random as possible so I don't create an even distracting pattern. Now the branches and trunks themselves are applied also with an ivory rigger brush, and I try to create a nice mix of dark branches and lighter branches without them being black or white. There's some variation in those tones. I love adding dimension and body to trees by using a bristle dagger brush, particularly old bristle dagger brushes. These apply some really nice random marks, perfect for some autumn leaves catching that afternoon sunlight. As these boughs of this willow tree hang over the creek, a few of the leaves are caught in a beam just above the water. I carry this color across to the left and then mix up a lighter green note to communicate some of those grass stalks that are also catching the sun. Now, because it was the dead of winter in the photographic reference that I was using, I wasn't getting much of the green to come back out. So here I want some intense, punchy green to bring this scene forward. I'm mixing up a combination of Hansa yellow as well as cadmium lemon. I've got transparent yellow oxide and cobalt teal. This is perfect for creating some of that grass that's in full sunlight, just immediately next to the water's edge. The trick is having a variety of greens, using plenty of texture and changing the direction of the brush strokes as I apply that paint, trying to go for something painterly but also have a moderate amount of detail. Now I'm happy with the sheep, although they did start taking on the appearance of some of these rocks, so hopefully I can create enough of a point of difference between those so we can differentiate between the two. Once I'm happy with the placement of everything, I've got a moderate amount of texture, I then begin detailing the water and the foreground, bringing the scene forward from the midground here all the way to the immediate foreground at the viewer's feet. Ivory flats and riggers are perfect for making some nice horizontal strokes out there in the midground water, causing these cascades to lay down flat. Now, when we're looking at this in perspective, the shapes begin to open up as they come further forward towards the viewer. And I love this little moment in the water above the cascade where we can see through that surface. I'll go ahead and detail this my usual way by letting some of these layers dry and applying some reflections over the top. It's a little bit of a challenge painting on a panel so small and trying to communicate some detail here to make it look somewhat realistic. But I'm also trying to balance this out with some painterly marks because at the end of the day, I want it to look like a painting too. So I'm still finding that balance, that happy medium between painterly and detailed. Anyway, always keen to hear your thoughts in those comments down below. Now, the point of this exercise was pretty simple, to take an average-looking photograph and make it a bit more interesting by changing just a few simple things. There's actually a full version to this painting demonstration that you're watching now, and it clocks in at over an hour long, and you can find that right now on Tisch Academy. We're going to talk all about color mixing as well as brushwork, and I'm going to share with you all of my painting techniques, leaving no stone unturned. Now, if you click that link down below, you'll get yourself a free 7-day trial of Tisch Academy. Think of it like an online art school, but you can do it at your own pace. The library there at Tisch Academy is well over 100, heck, 200 hours of painting content. There's more painting content there than you could shake a stick at. So check it out by clicking that link down below. I add a few little details to the sheep. Now that they have legs, they're looking a little bit less like rocks, and I'm happier with the overall result. I go for a random assortment of sheep here on this hillside. I'm thinking maybe this painting has got some legs and could make a nice bigger painting, but I'd love to hear what you think in those comments. I add a few last little details, some brighter notes of grass catching that sunlight, with a frayed bristle dagger as well as an ivory pointed round, and a few of these grass stalks down here in the lower left-hand corner, and the painting's done. Hey, thanks so much for spending this time with me here in the studio. I've really enjoyed your company, and I hope you've come away with something to think about, maybe a technique or two. I'll see you in the next video.